You're watching It's Life Live with your hosts, Juan Lee and Oliver Marcel. Come join us for enriching, enlightening, encouraging, and thought-provoking conversation. Let's go.
Hey.
What's going
on?
Hey,
everybody. Guess who's back? I know I'm back, but guess who else is back?
It feels like it's been a long I only missed 1 week, and it was funny, right? I was telling my wife before I came down. I was like, about to go live on the podcast. Like, I haven't been there for a couple weeks, and I was like, wait a minute, no, it was just last week, but it felt like a month that I haven't been here.
Well, you got to remember, we took a month off.
True.
And then we had the next week, we were together the first week back. And then you had an engagement last week.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it might feel that way for you.
It does. So I'm glad to be back, man. These are always extremely valuable conversations. And today, I have no doubt it will be no different.
I'm excited about that. Before we get to that, though, I want to welcome all of our guests that are with us coming out to listen and to partake and participate in this evening's It's Life Live, which is sponsored by Clear Journey, which is a nonprofit that supports individuals in a life that are in search of life's challenges, so answers to life's challenges. And we like to give you information, education, and resources to be able to navigate life's more successfully so that you can reach your full potential. And I am the founder of that organization, which is based out of a book I wrote called Love Made Simple, The Guide to Inner Peace, Contentment, and Success, where we basically talk about the right mindset, the love mindset, which allows us to navigate all the areas of life, no matter if it's a relationship, your finances, your health, or even your personal development. That's what the mindset, the love mindset, is all about. And tonight is going to be no different. We're going to be talking with a guest that I'm really excited about. And we're going to be running right down that lane about self-development, relationships, a whole lot of stuff. I mean, it's going to be a good thing. Also, in addition to that, if you want to know more about Clear Journey, just go over to clearjourney.org. And you can find out more about what we offer over there. Be a part of the member or be a part of our community, and you can receive our free ebook. Our free book is about budgeting, which we think is an essential role or essential part of our development, and our resources that we offer is this free ebook. It's called Budgeting Made Easy. Having the right mindset to understand the necessity for budgeting. It's priceless, but it's free to you. Go over there to get started. Just go over there, enroll. You got it. It's free. I'm gonna tell you, it's the kickoff to everything successful in your life, to be honest with you. If you got the right mindset, because it's nothing in your life that you're not going to have a financial implication. There's not going to be something in your life that you're going to have to deal with your finances. And we have to realize that we have to prepare for our dreams and our goals. Somebody has to finance them. So why not us? Prepare for them. And you start with learning how to budget. So that's something that we think is very important to get over there. Oliver,
yes, sir.
How have you been?
I've been well, man. I've been, we talked about this, I think it was a day or two ago, just the interesting journey that entrepreneurship is. So I'm experiencing some of those nuances, but all in all, things are good. I missed last week. Many of you know I'm extremely passionate about seeing relationships thrive, and missed last week due to being part of a 3-day marriage seminar. My wife and I are the marriage ministry leaders at the church that we attend. And so it was really cool to kind of go through that experience, ending on Saturday with a panel discussion, incredible panel discussion. So that's what I've been up to, and just enjoying that space. while navigating the nuances, I'm gonna use that word again, of of what this journey entails, man. I posted something on TikTok a few days ago, as not as a complaint, but actually as a way to encourage, you know, fellow entrepreneurs that, hey, listen, this thing can be unpredictable at times. It can be a head scratcher at times. It can be extremely rewarding at times, and so just keep trying. So that's how I am.
Hey, you coming in and out a little bit.
I
I
am.
don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's just me or not, but you were
Uh,
just in and out a little bit. But you in there, you good now, but you were just
okay,
in and
I'm
out
good.
in there a little bit.
Okay, I might have clipped the cord maybe.
Um, yeah, I mean, you know, I would say to suggest or to encourage those that are on that journey of entrepreneurship is look at the positive. Look at the benefits
Hmm.
that being an entrepreneur is all about and why you actually decided to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of there are different balls in that bag of entrepreneurship. Um, but I tell you, one of the greatest things that I think most entrepreneurs enjoy or like about it is the ability to be able to manage your greatest asset, which is your time.
Yeah.
To be able to have your own time to determine when and what you do, when you do it. I don't know if there's a price to that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a value you can put on that. I think the other piece that a lot of people, well, I'm not gonna say a lot of people don't look at, but I encourage people to look at is lean into the self development, the growth that takes place inwardly during that process, because you talked about looking at the positive, right? The positive side of those nuances, those ups and downs, highs and lows, is that it should be building some level of resiliency in you. It should be building some level of faith in you. It should be building some, there's certain things, man, that you should be benefiting from as it relates to your personal growth. And so lean into those as well.
Hey, there is not a day that goes by I can't say that I've learned something new. It's not one that goes by.
Yeah.
Got to embrace that stuff too.
Yep.
Well, look, I want to welcome all of the people from my meetup group that might be with us tonight. I thank you for coming on. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do in the comments. Anyone from the Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube, welcome. We're going to have a great show tonight. And we have a special guest, and I tell you, I'm just looking forward to this. So I mean, we gonna get ready to talk about some things that need to be said and gonna continue to be said and gonna enjoy saying them. Well, I'm like her saying them anyway. I'm just gonna piggyback off. So let us introduce her. I'm gonna give you a little backstory on her, and then she'll tell you more about herself when she comes on. Our guest is her name is Sabrina Gilchrist, and she's an expert. She's a nonprofit executive, ordained minister, licensed therapist, um, and she likes to promote spiritual uplifting, mental health, and positive living. She shares her journey of blended faith and mental health to help others heal and thrive. So, with that being said, Sabrina Gilchrist, welcome. Hello, hello, Sabrina.
Hello, hello. How
Well,
are
wait a
you
minute
all?
now. You know what?
Hmm.
Are you still Gilchrist?
Yes.
I'm sitting up here looking at Sabrina Nichole.
Well, that's my middle name. And it's also my platform. So if people try to look for or look on my website, they're not going to find Sabrina Gilchrist. They'll find Sabrina Nicole LLC.
All
And
right,
Nicole
so
is
we
spelled
got
with
that
an
out the
H.
way real quick and in a hurry because I was
Mhm.
like looking pretty bad here for a second when I looked up there and looked at it. I was
No.
like, dog, and she was up here. We were talking before we went on air. I ain't even pay attention to that. Now, and the
No.
interesting thing about that is because every time my assistant talks to me, she tells me, she goes, "You mean Sabrina Nicole?" I'm like, who is Sabrina Nichole? I was like, Sabrina Nichole Gilchrist. I was like,
Yes,
okay, all right,
one and
now
the
we talk.
same.
Yeah,
One and
now
the
we talk.
same.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Hey, we're happy to have you, and thank you
Yeah,
for deciding to take some
and
time to be with us. I tell you, all of the things that you talk about, and before we and let for introduce yourself, let the people know who you are. You already started a little bit, but introduce and let the people know who you are. That you want them to know how to understand. You know who you are.
Oh, wow. So that's loaded. How to understand me and how to know who I'm still trying to understand me.
Well,
Um,
you know, quickly you got Nichole up there and Gilchrist there, you know. But you already told us that story. But go
I
ahead.
did, I did, and I could go a little bit further with that, but suffice it to say, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of um, my vocations as a therapist, a minister, and a very intentional calling and choice to blend and integrate my mental health training with my spirituality and ministry. So that is where Sabrina Nichole LLC comes from. The reason that I minister under that platform of Sabrina Nichole is because I wanted to be very intentional about claiming all parts of myself. So even when I am Sabrina Gilchrist, you'll notice on the screen I have Sabrina N. Gilchrist. I'm very intentional about claiming all pieces of myself, and that has a lot to do with my story and my childhood and all of that.
Well, I mean, but you done laid it out there. You might as well keep going. You done
Keep
laid it out
going.
there. Go look. We
we
got you got the floor. We look,
got
look. Hey, look. Let's give her her own stage
everybody's
there.
interest. Everybody. The streets are wondering now.
Yeah, let's go on and give her the stage now, Oliver. Look, go ahead. We'll sit here and finish it, Oliver. We'll
All
close it
right
out.
now. Okay, be careful. You know I'm a preacher, so I can get long-winded, so you have to reel me in.
Hey,
But
look.
It's all good. We need a word, so we'll take
amen.
it.
Amen. No, I actually wrote a book called Child Get Up: Living with Mental Illness and Faith. And it is under Sabrina Nichole. So if somebody tries to look for it on Amazon, you're not going to find it under Gilchrist. But it is a very brief and personal memoir of my own struggles and my own triumphs with clinical depression and suicidality, anxiety, PTSD, sexual trauma, and childhood trauma, and how I navigated all of that with faith and with counseling. So that's really what the crux of the book is about. But really, when I talk about my childhood and talk about claiming all pieces of myself, I think it's important to talk about generational trauma. We have to understand that there are things that happened in the family, whether we know it or not, that impact, our own stories. And so, in my story, is a good bit of my mother's story kind of woven into it. My mother was a survivor of extreme physical abuse and verbal abuse from her father, who was a preacher, a well-known preacher, phenomenal preacher, as a matter of fact. And I halfway jokingly tell people he could preach you under the pews on a Sunday morning and then cuss out his family and slap them upside the head driving back home after church. No disrespect to that side of the family, but that's the story that I've come to know and understand. And so my mother did a very good job of not perpetuating the majority of those abusive behaviors um, onto her children. However, she was not able to hold back all of it. And so, while I was not, my story is not one of my mother kicking me with army boots or anything like that. There was a lot of verbal abuse. There was I am in the last couple of years, at least with the help of therapy, I've been able to name that there was some physical abuse. And being a very sensitive child and also a very spiritual child, right? I wanted to go to church. I prayed all the time. I tried to make sense of life, through my faith. And that also created a situation where I needed to reconcile my faith as I got older and did not understand and try to make meaning out of my journey and my mother's journey as I understood it, and making that really firm decision that I was not going to perpetuate the unhealthy things. I decided that it was going to end with me, whether I have children or not. This cycle of abuse, this pattern of depression, this pattern of suicidality, this, all of these things, they end with me. And so when my mother passed away in 2007, um, I talk about this because people are like, she was so close to her mom, and I was very close to my mom. Love her, she was a wonderful woman, um, but not without her own story and her own things that she needed to get over, right? But she was phenomenal. She was an educator for over 36 years. People loved her. She was a woman of faith. She would pray you, I mean, she'd pray anything and everything up out of you, right? She was a wonderful, wonderful woman, but she was not happy.
Mm.
And the day she died, I remember just crying and bawling, and people were trying to comfort me. And I only had one question for them. I said, was she ever really happy? And people thought at that point I was crying because I was sad that she died. No, I was sad because of how she lived, or did not live while she was breathing, right? And that night I determined, when my time comes and I am no longer on this earth, no one will ever have to ask the question, was she ever happy? So that started my long journey in therapy and healing family wounds and overcoming trauma, and just determining I don't have to follow the narrative or the pattern. I can make my own path.
Wow.
I
Very powerful story.
Thank you.
I am very touched by it. But here's the thing that's very, and I think, I don't know if when you and I talked, I don't think we got that in detail about
Mm-mm.
your story. Um, but let me ask you a question. How similar do you think your story is to other people of faith?
Mm. I would say, I think that there are lots of similarities that people can find throughout our stories. I think that there are a lot of factors that can go into how we interpret, how we navigate life, and how we handle situations that we are confronted with. And so I don't think my story, or the essence of my story, is unique. But I do think that there are some things that happened that were uniquely meant for me to walk through, right? Um, yeah, that's really what I think about that. Hmm.
I didn't mean to say. I mean, the fact that your story is unique because it's yours,
Hmm.
but the things that you talk about as it relates to the hypocrisies of religion versus the face of religion.
Hmm.
You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
and how it's acceptable to have this dual personality, this duality as it relates to your walk in this thing.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and it's acceptable, and at the root of it, it's absolutely, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but does it appear to be confusing? This is the confusion of it all.
Mm. Mm.
Would you agree with that?
Well, you got to keep in mind too, Juan, I'm a therapist. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nothing is ever quite as black and white as that. But what I will say is, um, I've come to, for example, we're talking about my grandfather. Um, I have come to understand that hurting people hurt people unless they do the work to heal.
Mhm.
I also throw out there the times that they were living in back then. It was very different. It wasn't uncommon for men to beat their wives and their children back then. It wasn't uncommon. I mean, this we're talking about like 40s and 50s now. And so I do want to lay out that the times and the culture was a little bit different. Um, Not absolving, but
Hmm.
simply saying that there are some different cultural factors at play there. Um, Now, in terms of doing one thing and saying something different, I mean, that is, um, yes, that is confusing. I think it is, what we see in scripture, where we kind of get that message of do as I say and not as I do, which is kind of what the Pharisees in the scriptures in the New Testament were accused of doing. Of course, we want to align and be congruent. We want the goodness and the gospel we preach to be embodied by the life we live, right? That is the way. Um, Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that all the time, and then that's where we get instances of spiritual injury and maybe even religious trauma. And so I do tell people there's a set of folks out here who are not done with God, but they are done with organized religion for some of those very reasons.
Hmm.
And so I borrow from an author that I can't recall his name right now, but he calls them spiritual refugees. And so I say I'm called to the spiritual refugee. I those who are like, I'm done with church. I love God, but I'm done with church. And so those folks, I include myself in that, we need um the guidance and the pastoral care and all of the things that it takes to heal whatever wounds may still exist, and lean in and live into our relationship with God in a way that we can embody the very faith and the very gospel that we believe.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah. That's
That's
go
good.
ahead,
That's
Oliver.
good.
You have a question?
So, and and I know there's more we got to get to, but just since we're talking about this, I do have a question as it relates to the faith-based community, right? So you talked about the spiritual refugees, folk that are done with church as it relates to organization, right?
Mhm.
What what in your expert opinion,
Mm.
what can the faith-based community do to mend that? Because
Mm.
we've created in many cases a space where as long as I show up right, I'm right. But you don't know, we were just talking about this in the sessions that we were doing last week. You as long as my wife and I come in and we like praise the Lord, we blessed and highly favored, we suited and booted, everything looks good, we smelling good. You think we're good. You don't know we fought on the way in. You don't know we about to fight on the way back. And it's almost like the space has been designed in such a way that that's the only way you could show up. There can't be a level of authenticity that allows the room for growth and transformation. So what can the faith-based community do to turn that around? Because we want people to be feel safe and feel like they can come to a place where they can get hope and healing and help.
Oliver, we don't have enough time for all of
I,
that,
I
sir.
know, I know.
But I will start the conversation and certainly um, invite continued conversation, because that is something that I think we need to be very honest about and strategic about. And I think it starts with acknowledgement.
Mm,
I think it starts with naming the hurt and the damage that has been done. And I think where there's some people with larger platforms who have started naming some things and then they've gotten crucified because of it. And
true.
I'm saying, no, we can't fix it if we don't call it what it is, right? Um, and the truth is, the church, Big C, has perpetuated hurt and pain.
Mhm.
We have done things that we should not have done. And then, there's so many people who went to church or have gone to the church for hope and healing and all of that, and in return they got judged and they got beat up on even more. And then unfortunately, this is where a lot of religious trauma, I shouldn't say a lot, this is where some of the religious trauma comes in. um, Again, hurting people hurt people. So if you are sitting in a seat of authority and you have not dealt with your own stuff, the likelihood that you're going to get your stuff on somebody else is very high. And because people usually are coming to the church, Big C, with their vulnerabilities, with their hurts, with their pains, if we are not careful, we will end up manipulating and taking advantage of people's vulnerabilities instead of loving them and helping them and guiding them so that God can heal them. And so that's another piece to it that I think too is we've got to remember that people are just people. No disrespect to the man or woman of God who's standing up and they're pastoring and all of that, shepherding. But at the end of the day, it's God that does the work. I was reading the text today where Paul was saying, "Hey, I planted, Apollos watered, but it was God that brought about the increase." We've got to remember that it's God who does the work, not us. And so, and that takes a huge level of humility. So that's the other piece. And I will say this, and you're going to get me in trouble. And so when people start attacking me, I'm going to tell you, Oliver, that this is your fault.
All right.
Um,
I'm
but,
I'm gonna stand with you.
I told you
but
I'm gonna be in the background going like, I told her. I told her.
I cringe a little bit when I see certain things that happen in the church now. Um, and not every church falls under this category. Let me say that there are still some places and some churches and some houses of faith that I think are doing good work, right?
Mhm.
But I think somewhere along the line we got off track as a faith community when we started focusing on money, clothes, houses, and cars. And that's not to say that the preacher shouldn't get a salary or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But when our focus became the material stuff, and when our focus became looking like we got it together, looking like, we are blessed and highly favored of God, we missed it because Jesus says, seek ye first,
Mhm.
right? And then all that other stuff will be added unto you. Unfortunately, people started seeking the stuff to
Mhm.
try to prove to themselves or to others that they have Jesus
Yeah.
or that they have God. And so we've missed it. And in the midst of all of that, the big thing we've missed is people.
Mm.
If my church is focused on $500 and $5,000 lines, and I'm trying to save my penny so I can get up in the line so people can see me get up in the line, and then I get to run around the church because I was able to write that big check, right? But don't nobody know that I haven't been able to pay my light bill for the last 6 months because nobody is teaching me. God wants you to pay your bills, baby.
Right.
We've missed it. We've missed people.
Yeah.
Um, when we are insistent that people show up in church for church services, doesn't matter that they got a whole family sitting at home.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter that they worked all day and then had to turn around and take care of their um, aging parents and
Mhm.
also had to cook dinner for their children. And then, oh, by the way, you better take care of your spouse. Nobody's talking about balance. I
Mhm.
can't be in your church all the time if I'm going to live my life in the balance and in the way that God would want me to live, right? We're not talking about that because if you don't show up in my church service, my pews look empty and my offering basket is not going to be as full.
Mhm.
Now I'm just calling it like I see it.
Hey, I
And the
love.
sacrifice of that is the people.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna give you a look.
There it is.
There's little this conversation that's not gonna be a little bit dicey. I mean, the whole thing already that started off, and it might as well keep it going.
Listen,
Let me
I ain't
ask you a
scared. I
question.
know I say stuff, but I ain't never scared. I'll stand by
Hey,
what I say.
hey, look, I'm right there with you.
Mhm.
Challenges that you face while promoting mental health in the faith community. Tell us some of challenges you come up against while promoting mental health in the faith community.
Yeah. So I am happy to report that it is not as challenging as it used to be. I think that recent, and by recent, of course, I'm talking about maybe the last 5 years. post-pandemic, whatever. There's some things that have happened that it is inevitable. We cannot deny the mental health crisis in this country. Um, Nobody can deny it anymore, and so that has made it a little more palatable to talk mental health. Once upon a time, at least in the tradition that I grew up in, right? Um, Mental health was not something that was discussed.
Mhm.
In fact, most of the time it was you just need to pray it out,
Mhm.
right? Um, and if you need to talk to somebody, you go talk to the preacher. This idea of going to a therapist, it just wasn't really a thing. Um, and so earlier on in my mental health work, there were some folks who were maybe a little bit resistant. And resistant is probably too strong of a word. They were cautious and suspicious,
Mhm.
not necessarily resistant. And I think the more we talk about the real that's happening in the world, the more I think people are open to at least exploring mental health a little bit more than they used to be. I really like the shirts and the like the apparel and the paraphernalia that says Jesus and therapy, right? And those kinds of things. So I think the narrative is starting to change. But I have been told before, um, you don't need to talk to nobody, you just need to pray. All you need is King Jesus. You don't need nobody else. And especially around conversations of medication. I have had people who have said you don't need no medicine. You need to trust God. And I'm like, if somebody is sitting on the edge of a bridge thinking about whatever, they probably need some medicine and Jesus. And so we've got to stop um, stigmatizing, and we have to stop discouraging people from doing the things that they feel they need to do in order to be okay. And
Mhm.
so I a lot of times now, if I am coming up against that kind of suspicion or resistance, I liken it to, are you going to tell somebody with diabetes not to take their diabetes medicine?
Mhm.
If
Right.
you are on heart medicine, are you not going to take your heart medicine because all you need is King Jesus? so,
Yeah.
so trying to just normalize that, and think about it from a different perspective so that people can be well. That's at the end of the day, Jesus, God, the Lord, Holy Spirit, whomever it is, and however you call him or her, um, they want you to be well. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
It's
Yeah.
it's very interesting because there is a connection there, I believe, that we've overlooked in trying to think that they have to be separated.
Hmm.
Um, I think we can take a more of a holistic approach in understanding the creator as being the creator of all things, and understanding that everything was created was good.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah. And that's important because I think a lot of the apprehension is, if I'm going to go to therapy, if I'm going to uh, take medication, that now negates the power of Jesus, right? And it's not that, right? So if there's a story in the Bible where I think they needed to pay like some tax or something like that, right? So Jesus could have made the tax go away. He could have made the money disappear, but he was like, "No, go catch these fish." And they went and put in some work, and when they put in that work, in the mouth of the fish was the thing, right?
Hmm.
So sometimes it's God putting the Sabrinas of the world in your path so that you can be made whole, right? And that's his way of manifesting that in your life. And sometimes we overlook the fact that he can work in those ways and
Yes.
does work in those ways.
Hmm.
And because we don't see it as just this lightning bolt, I'm good today, we're apprehensive about it.
It,
Absolutely. And I would add one thing to that, Oliver. I would say most of the time, that's how this works. Very seldom do
Mm,
we have those miraculous, oh, he did it suddenly kind of thing. So most of the time, especially in the work of healing, uh, there's some work that's got to go along with it, and it's a process, and it takes patience, and it takes consistency. And so I tell people, listen, it's gonna hurt. It is gonna hurt, and sometimes it hurts more before it actually heals. I liken it to getting a broken bone. Sometimes the healing process
mm,
hurts more than the original injury,
mhm.
but you got to go through it in order to be restored.
Yeah.
And so, I tell people, don't give up just because you prayed this one time and it didn't happen, or it doesn't seem like it's fixed. And also, don't be fooled by your emotions,
Mm,
because we can get happy, we can get excited, we run around, oh, I breakthrough. Yeah. Emotionally, but you're gonna have to walk this thing out. And so tomorrow you may not feel breakthrough like you felt it tonight, but that doesn't mean that the healing is not happening. It just means we have to go through the process.
yeah.
Welcome to Clear Journey,
It's good.
where it's the practical application of love.
That's right.
That's what we're about, making love real. And it hurts sometimes,
Hmm.
but you've got to be able to do the work to be able to get to the outcome, to get the fulfillment that you're looking for. Go
Absolutely.
ahead, Oliver. You know I'm always gonna put a doggone caveat in there because
Hey,
this is the platform.
hey, we'll take the caveats. I mean, I think this is a great conversation. I want to go back though. You graciously shared your story with us. Thank you for doing that.
Hmm.
Um, and quite often, if not always, the realization of our passion and our purpose is generally tied to some level of pain we experience. So what was describe that time where you're like, okay, I'm gonna parlay this into serving others in the same way.
Hmm. I laugh because I don't think it wasn't one aha moment.
Okay.
I will say I was a strange kid. Um, and I say that because, in the summertime where most kids are out riding bikes and, going swimming at the pool, I was at home with commentaries and Bible dictionaries and Bibles pulled out in notebooks. That's how I spent my summers, was studying the Bible. So I was a very faith-filled kid,
Mhm.
and was just weird like that. Um, so I always had a passion for ministry. In fact, I wanted to be a preacher's preacher, right? I wanted to do my thing on
You're gonna be an
on
apostle.
well, not necessarily that. I just wanted to be a really good preacher. And I was also, thank God, I was also a smart kid. So I did really well in school and went to college and thought I was going to be a psychologist. I thought I had a passion for biopsych. And so I was working in rat labs and doing research and all that kind of stuff. And when it came time to graduate, I was like, I'm going to go get my PhD and I'm going to get it in biopsych. And then that didn't happen. And then it was, well, I'm going to get my PhD in health psych. And that didn't happen. Every avenue that I tried, the door closed. And I got frustrated and I said, okay, God, I'm mad. I've done everything that I was supposed to do. People are looking at me like I'm crazy. When your professors say, Sabrina, what happened?
Mhm.
like, like that's a bad feeling. And then, my mom swore up and down I was sabotaging myself. You just don't want to go to school. And I'm like, no, y'all, I really am trying. I'm
Yeah.
trying. And so, in my frustration one night, I threw my Bible up against the wall and I told God I was angry. And I said, I don't know what you want me to do, but I'm over it. And I heard very clearly, counseling.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Um, I had not thought about counseling. It was not anything that my family, as far as I knew, was familiar with. My only my only experience with counseling was one elective course that I took at WSSU, and I took it just because I had to have something. And it did not occur to me that I excelled in this class. I mean, I aced every test, I aced every paper, I aced every role play. It did not register.
Hmm.
Hey, this might be something.
Right.
This might be your thing. It did not register. So I didn't tell anyone that I was thinking about pursuing counseling, except one professor at WSSU, Dr. Shirley Manigo, who was my honors. She was the director of the honors program at WSSU at the time. And I was talking to her and I said, I think I want to go into counseling. I said, but I also, one night working third shift, was just scrolling the internet. And I said, but I also found this program at Wake Forest University, the divinity school, and I'm really interested in it.
Mm.
And Dr. Manigo grinned and she said, oh, I know the dean of that program. He goes to my church. And she said, oh, and by the way, they're working through a dual degree program right now with the counseling program.
Look at that.
Really? So, so I would say that it's going along the journey and letting the pieces come together is
Mhm.
how I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Um, and then, of course, my own story in the midst of it. So I tell people, for me, this work isn't just textbook.
Mhm.
It is also experiential.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to be the therapist in the room. I certainly know what it's like to be the client in the room.
Mhm.
I know what it's like to have to pray about something. I know what it's like to be so angry that I can't pray. Right? Like it's very experiential for me. And that's also why I have a lot of passion in it. Um, I will very briefly also share this. If there was a icing on the cake moment for me about tying all of this stuff together. Um, I did a stint in the psychiatric hospital as a patient, not as a therapist, as a patient. um, and even in the psych ward, I had my Bible and I had my notebooks and I had my little pencils that they had to be real careful that you couldn't hurt yourself or nobody else with.
Mhm.
Um, and I would sit at the table and I was working on a sermon and the patients, lots of them, just came and sat around me and they started talking to me about faith and about God and about Jesus, and I ended up sitting there ministering to the people around me. um there was one of the nurses who, I don't know why, but she was like, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, sure. So we're walking down the hall and she's just sharing what she's going through, and I'm listening and I'm ministering to her, and the light bulb went off for me. I am I glad that I was there? No. Am I glad that I was there? Yes, because I needed to be. But I also saw that God wants to work in this way. That people need to know that there is faith, and that there is hope, and that there is healing, and that you can get it. Um, that you can have Jesus and
Mhm.
your mental well-being, right? So yeah.
Wow. That's good. That's good. You're helping people overcome uh, by the word of your testimony
Thank you.
and by the training of your degree.
Thank you. Can I just say when I did get out the hospital and preach that sermon, I think that was the best sermon I've ever preached. It
They,
was forged in some fire. Mhm.
Exactly.
those
Exactly.
those those sermons that are lived first.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let me ask a question. What kind of strategies do you recommend to help people dealing with spiritual trauma or religious trauma?
Mm. Yeah, so the first thing I'm going to always say is go find you a therapist, right? And I say that
Mhm.
that's not, I promise that's not a promo for myself or whatever, but that's sincere.
Ooh.
That's sincere.
Mhm.
I say that because I think a lot of times people think that they can do their work on their own, and you
I don't
can
want to
open.
interrupt right there. Can you
Mhm.
explain why you say that first? Okay, why do you say that the way you said it? Because I don't want you to get going, but for you to say that to get over trauma from an institution or an organization that was meant to help you, to
Mhm.
encourage you, to lift you up. You need to get a therapist outside of it to be able to help you overcome it. Explain how you get to that conclusion.
So let me just say this. I didn't say the therapist had to be outside of it. There are different types of therapists. So where I was going with this was, find you a therapist that is a good fit for you. There are some people who do biblical counseling. There are some people who do spiritually integrated counseling, which is more what I do. There are some folks who don't do any kind of spiritual integration. They're strictly secular. And if you are hurt that much, you may, the sound of a scripture or the thought of a prayer might turn your stomach right now because you're having a trauma reaction to it. So really it's about finding the right fit. I do think that there are some therapists who are in the church who can help people navigate their trauma, but I think it's about the client. It's about, what do you need, and so even for folks who say, well, I'll just go talk to another preacher, or I want to talk to a minister. Okay, that's fine. But I think you've got to make sure you're talking to the right people. And right is more about the training they have and the ability or the capability they have to sit with you in that particular pain without necessarily trying to dictate or push you out of it before you are ready to be out of it. Does that make sense? Um, so I tell people, go to a therapist, A, because we've been trained, B, because there are certain protections in that. So, for example, I've got some family members that I'm trying to convince to go to therapy. And one of the things that I hear often is, well, I don't want my business out in the street. No, that's why you go to a therapist, because legally and ethically, we have to keep your stuff confidential. There's only 3 reasons that we can break confidentiality. And it is not just because we want to put your business in the street. And so I have said to people, if I break your confidentiality without these specific requirements of when I must, according to the law, you can sue me for every penny I don't have.
Hmm.
So I say it is risky if you're going to some other type of helping professional, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but there are certain protections and certain things in place um, that helps to create that container of safety for you. So that you can put your stuff out there, so you can say whatever you need to say without being concerned or being afraid. Um, so that's really why I say, go to a therapist first. Don't try to do this on your own, especially if the wounds are deep. And so one of the things that I say to people is, especially when you have been carrying trauma for quite some time, or it's very deep trauma, it's like opening up Pandora's box. When you decide that you want to start getting into it, you're going to find that there are lots of deep things in there, and you don't want to be in a place where you're trying to sift through all of that by yourself. You need support to get through those things. So that is why I say that as the first strategy: find you a therapist, right? The second thing I would say is, be gracious with yourself, be patient with yourself. And this is where pacing and process are so important. A lot of times we try to um, rush out of or rush through something. And for people who are not trained, they may try to rush you through it. But pacing and process and honoring where you are in the process, that is how we truly heal, right? And we're talking about not just treatment. I don't want treatment. I want healing. And so that may mean that it's going to take a little bit longer than what I had envisioned or hoped for. There might be some stuff along the way. In fact, in my own story, I have found, once I get through one thing, I'm like, oh, there's something else under here. Let me get up. Let me get after that too. And so it has been this long process for me um, that I needed pacing for. And I needed the support, not just of my therapist, but I have what I call my tribe, or my earthly angels. And these are the people right here on earth who I feel so close to, and I know love and care for me, that if I have an issue, I can call them and they will show up. And I'll use this example. Um, you know, I shared my battle with major depression, and it's not just a simple, like the little Zoloft commercials. Like, it was bad. It was bad, and the suicidality was bad. I was ready on several occasions to just leave here. The way I got to the hospital was through two of my earthly angels who coordinated sneaking me out so other people would not know where I was going and getting me to the hospital to get some help. Um, when I came out of the hospital and I had a better sense and a better handle on these are all the challenges that I have with my mental health, one of the things I did was I made sure that one of those people who could get to me quickly had a key to my house. When I started having, relapses or episodes where I could feel myself going downhill, I made a point to text my angels and say, "Tonight is rough. Can somebody please call me tomorrow?" Right? These are the kinds of things. And because I'm surrounded by folks who are like, "We love you. We're not going to let you face this on your own. We got you." And sure enough, whether it's a phone call, whether it's I'm gonna show up at your house if you don't answer this phone, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
It matters. So having a circle, a tribe, a support system that you truly trust matters. That's another strategy. How many more you want? I just keep talking.
No, that's it. I
That's
mean,
good.
I think
That's
that's good.
yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to ask this other question though. How do people recognize that they're in the area of depression, anxiety, or having some type of spiritual trauma, or having some type of some trauma? How can they recognize it? Because we're so almost we treat ourselves as though it's okay to go through stuff like that. How do
Mhm.
people recognize these things for themselves so that they can go get the help that they need?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are a few signs and symptoms, and I think it really comes down to pausing enough to take inventory of self. We are we are on the go all the time, that even something physical like a headache, a little tinge of a headache, we'll be like, "Oh, let me just pop this Tylenol. I got something to do." Well, that headache is telling you there's something else going on, but we don't sit long enough to inventory and to scan and to say what's happening. So part of what I try to encourage my clients to do is pause for a little bit, check in with yourself, do a body scan. um, there are signs and symptoms of depression. And I want to be very clear that when I say depression, I'm talking about it in a clinical sense, not just you had a sad day.
Mhm. Mhm.
Depression, there are some things and some criteria that we look for in terms of clinical depression. So the sadness lasts for a certain period of time. You may find that you are fatigued or have extreme tiredness. You may find that you're not motivated to do some of the things that you used to love to do. You may be sleeping more. You may be sleeping less. You may be eating more. You may be eating less. But basically, it's paying attention to and noticing um, those changes and those fluctuations for you, and if it lasts over time. Um, Other things that I say to people is check your even your social circle. If you find that your relationships are suffering, if you find that you're irritable more often than not, certainly for me, one of my telltale signs was I cried all the time for no reason, quote unquote, no reason. Um, And then also, if you're someone who gets sick a lot, there's a book that I absolutely love called The Body Keeps Score. And it's talking about how trauma shows up in the body, right? And so I tell people, get in your body. For a lot of us, we have been very disconnected from our bodies, but our bodies will give us a lot of insight into what's happening in our emotions and in our psyche. So, somatic work, yoga, those types of body focused movements and interventions can be very helpful in helping us to track what's happening with anxiety. Some similarities, but um, certainly, really the mental or the cognitive challenges of anxiety. So one that I deal with is rumination. where your mind is cycling thoughts over and over and over. The inability to, what I'll say, calm down or come down. So a
Mhm.
lot of times, I'm up and I'm wired. I can be exhausted, but my mind just keeps going, and so I can't bring it down unless I do some really intentional intervention with myself to try to alleviate those anxieties. Um,
I'm a testimony to that.
mm,
I
mm-hmm.
can testify to that. So anxiety and sleep depression,
Yeah. Yep.
depravity, you don't even recognize it,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden you go up and look, and it's been years.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I did a sleep study, so sort of a self whatever sleep study using my my fitness watch.
Mhm.
And what I discovered was my sleep is awful. I
Mm.
think at most I might get 7 minutes of REM.
Wow.
And the majority of my sleep, which is usually only 3 or 4 hours,
It's
is
light.
it's light.
Mm.
And I said,
I've
well,
been
that
there.
explains a lot.
I've been there. I've been there. I've been there. I'm currently on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Currently on that journey, and to have realized how what you were just talking about, your body speaking to you,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you cannot understand it. You do not know, are not in tune enough with your body to know that it's telling you something,
Yes.
and you're not listening for whatever reason. You don't know the language, you don't understand it. I've been on a 2 or 3 year journey trying to get to the understanding that I have today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is by no means um something that it's, who would have thought it? You'd be like, when you begin to put your mind and connect it to your body
Yes.
and understand the importance and the significance of how that works, you will be amazed as to how it impacts your health.
Absolutely. There, there is truly a mind, body, soul, spirit, emotion, whatever, connection. Uh,
Mhm.
they are all connected. And so,
Hmm.
last week, my counseling partner, Tawani Dewberry, and I were in Chicago doing seminars with some nonprofit executive leaders on trauma in the C-suite. Because there is trauma that exists. As a leader, we experience trauma, right? So trying to help us work through and recognize the signs of trauma, and then how do you recover from it. And truly there are signs and symptoms that you find across all the domains of being a person. There are physical symptoms, there are emotional and mental symptoms, there are relational symptoms, which is why I said check out your relationships. What's happening, between you and your spouse, what's happening between you and your children, what's happening between you and your boss or your colleagues.
Mhm.
Those are some signs and symptoms we can look for. And then there are also spiritual symptoms. And one of the, I'll say two of the ones that I talk with people about when we're intentionally talking about spirituality is that existential dread, that whole there's no purpose to life, there's no hope for humanity, that kind of existential, why are we here? That existential dread is a sign and a symptom that you're dealing with trauma and probably a little depression too.
Mm.
And then the other is when you are no longer able to create meaning out of the things that happen in your life. As human beings, we are wired to create meaning. And I love Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And he tells his own story. He weaves his story in his book, talking about how he survived the Holocaust and being in the concentration camps. And Frankl quotes Nietzsche, where Nietzsche says, anyone, if you have a why to live for, you can deal with almost any how. And that speaks to our need as people to have meaning.
Mhm.
So when we cease or when we are struggling to find meaning and create meaning in our lives, that's a sign of spiritual distress and symptoms of trauma and depression.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's
or
for For those of you who are listening or might be watching the replay, you got some great information around signs, around some things that you can put in place. I love that. I love the earthly angels piece, and just having that circle around you that cares about you and cares for you in that way, supports you in that way. It's awesome.
Thank you. And I
A
want to say that's
community.
reciprocal, right? It's not just them caring for me, but also I say that intentionally because sometimes people like it's all about me. No, you got to show up too. You got to do your loving and caring too. But yeah,
It's a
they're amazing.
community. It's a community.
Absolutely.
And that's again, I don't want to be but that's what we're here to build a community here at Good Journey,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that we can have that kind of support as we go through our journey. Hey,
Hmm.
tell us what you're going to be doing. Uh, this is your floor. Tell us about what's going on with you and how people can reach you.
Oh my goodness. There's so much happening.
Hmm.
I would say the best way for people to reach me is to go to my website, thesabrinanichole.com. And remember, Nicole is spelled Nichole. And they can also follow me on Facebook and on Instagram, the Sabrina Nicole. I also have a YouTube channel, Sabrina Nicole LLC. And on that YouTube channel, I'm building more content, but on the YouTube channel, there's some sermons there and some words of wisdom and a couple of podcast episodes that I did with some others. And so, certainly encourage people to check those resources out. Um, yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with me. But right now, um, got some seminars on the horizon. I've got a couple of workshops on the horizon. I've got a women's retreat coming up the first weekend in November. Got some folks apparently wanting me to do a little more podcast interviewing. So lots of things happening. I'm very excited.
Great,
Very
great,
Excellent.
excited.
great, great. So, can anybody reach out to you directly? Do you have a direct way of people to reach out to you? Can they email you?
Sure. You can email me at the Sabrina Nicole at gmail.com.
Did I have that one up there? Is that
Yes,
it?
that's it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And giving people every opportunity to reach out to you and grab you, because I think you are exactly what people are looking for, who need that understanding that there is a both and. It's not necessarily either or.
Yes. Yes.
And I think when we become aware of that, we begin to become whole.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you coming tonight to share your expertise. And I really hope that we can continue to collaborate. We can be
Absolutely.
together and do some things, because I tell you, the lane that you're in is the same lane that I'm in with my speaking and with my teaching, in the sense of building a community that is a little bit unorthodox,
Yeah.
but at the same time meets the holistic need of the individual.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Um, and don't go anywhere, but we're going
Okay.
to close out the show, and we'll be back to talk to you a little bit later. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Great stuff.
Thanks, Oliver.
Man, that was good. That was good, as I knew it would be. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
I look, I needed that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
needed that because it really, as people being able to realize that the things that we do here at Clear Journey is
mhm,
exactly what she's doing in her own ministry and her own thing. And that is that we're taking this abstractness, this very abstract thing called love,
yeah,
and we're making it practical, making it real, so people can live their full um, their full potential and reach all of the aspirations and goals that they have in life.
yeah. It's good stuff, man. And for those of you watching live or watching the replay, you heard the immense value that Sabrina gave just in this little bit of time, right? And so if you know that you can benefit from going on a journey with her to get to where you need to be. You need to reach out to her. And I put the website back on the screen as well. I mean, for individual coaching, small group coaching, consulting small groups, consulting organizations, teaching. There's so many things that she can provide, training that can get you to the space that you want to be in. And yeah, just reach out. Like, don't you owe it to yourself to be who God wants you to be. And again, like we talked about, sometimes it's someone being placed in your path is God's way of working. And so don't miss out on this opportunity to reach out to Sabrina Nichole.
And on that note, Oliver, let the people know where they can reach and get in touch with you.
Indeed, if you're a social media person, social media handle is right there at Denali LLC. Very passionate about seeing relationships thrive. Author, speaker, and coach in the relationship building and men's enrichment spaces. Author of the book, I don't have the book in front of me today, Overcoming the Man Laws for the man who wants to be his best despite what he was taught. And so if you are in a space where you want to build and maintain the relationship of your dreams, we should probably have a conversation.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, Also, yes, I am Wanley. I'm the love mindset coach. I'm a love mindset coach. I'm basically talking about how to put the mindset of love in your daily operation so that you can navigate life more successfully in all areas of life. I will be coming up with a course coming up soon. I'm also will be launching another program that's going to be coming out shortly. It's going to be very interesting and very similar to what we've talked about here tonight as it relates to the philosophy of love, is what we're going to be starting, hopefully sometime in the near future, before the end of the year. I'm going to say that. Can we say that, Oliver?
Yeah, we can.
All righty. But yeah, so that's something that you can look out for. But if you have any other questions you want to reach out to myself, you can reach me at info@clearjourney.org. And by all means, go over and check out our website and see if there's something there that might be able to encourage you on your journey through this thing called life. Anything else there, Oliver?
No, I think that's good. I would encourage, those of you who are watching to, if you didn't do so, to go back and watch key points of this and take notes. Some really great guidance and direction given by Sabrina for some things that you can do. Now, that's not going to take the place of you reaching out to her. Let's be clear. You're going to still have to connect with her, but
Yeah.
this is a good launching point and some great notes that you can take when you reach out to her to say, hey, listen, you talked about this particular thing. How do we get there? And she can guide you in that direction. So good stuff. Great show.
All righty. Well, as usual, we appreciate all of you all who attend or came out and to spend their evening with us tonight. And as usual, as we say every night, we can't change life, but we can help you navigate it a little bit better. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Later.